Episode 5 of Pathways Plus is brought to you by Ashley and Nathan Bayless, Ed Moss, and supporters like you. For more information, go to www.pathwaystoenglish.org.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Pathways Plus Episode 5. We are so excited that you are here continuing on the path of learning. Today we will be talking about commas. Previously on Pathways Plus, we have already talked about commas and some rules that we have when we use commas. We talked about using commas in dates like January 30th, 1996. And we talked about using commas in lists. For example, I am getting bread, eggs, milk, and cheese from the store. Today, we will be talking about 2 more rules when we use commas. So let's slide to our learning target and we will figure out what we are learning about today. Let's read our learning target together. Ready? I am learning to use commas in addresses and dialogue. Okay, we will talk about what addresses are and dialogue are a little bit later, but first, let's slide to see our keywords. Let's read our learning target together. I am learning to use commas in addresses and dialogue. Let's slide to our keywords. Our keywords for today are addresses. Now, addresses are where you live. So you might give someone your address so they can come to where you live. For example, you might say 123 Tree Avenue, and that might be your address. So when we talk about an address today, it's talking about a place or somewhere that either someone lives or someone wants to go, just a place in the world. The second word for today is dialogue. Now, dialogue is a tricky word, but dialogue just means that in writing, when someone's speaking, they use quotation marks. Now let me show you what quotation marks look like, just so you're familiar, so when you see it, you know, oh, those are quotation marks, and they're symbolizing that someone is speaking. So quotation marks just look like this. And quotation marks just mean that someone is speaking. They're actually talking. Our last keyword is between. And between means that if we have this hand and this hand, my head is right in between it. If it was over here, it wouldn't be in between it. But if it's here, it's in between it. You have one hand here, and my head is right in between my hands. So when we use commas, a lot of times it needs to be between a city and a state, or between a word and a quotation mark. Now let's slide and talk about our rules for commas. When we use commas in addresses, we need to put it in between the city and the state. Also, we need to put it in between a city or a state and a country. So if it goes city, country, we put the comma in between the city and the country. So I have an example here. I have Provo, Utah. And in between Provo and Utah, I have a comma. I also have it so it goes city, Provo, comma, state, Utah, comma, country, USA. Or maybe you have Provo, USA. So you write Provo, comma, USA. let's slide to learn about the rules for dialogue. When we use dialogue in our writing, the rules for using commas in dialogue is we need to put it in between who is talking and what they're saying. So in my examples, I have Fabian asked, comma, will you go to the market with me? Do you see how the comma's in between who's talking, Fabian asked, and then what is she saying? Will you go to the market with me? And the comma's right after asked. Now, in another example, I have, will you go to the market with me? Fabian asked. And the comma's in between what she said, will you go to the market with me, comma, end quotation, Fabian asked. Who's talking? Fabian. So in dialogue, we put the comma in between who's talking and what they say. Let's slide to the next slide and I'll model a few for you. Our first sentence is about my friend Christy. And Christy lives in Haiti. And this sentence says, Christy lives in St. Mark, Haiti. So let's first write that together. So Christy lives in St. Mark, Haiti. We need to figure out where the comma goes in this one. So are we talking about addresses or dialogue? Great, we're talking about an address. Where in the world are we talking about? Let's underline it. St. Mark, Haiti. Awesome. Remember, we need to split up the city or the state and the country. So what is the city? St. Mark. So we have St. Mark, and then our country is Haiti. So we're going to put a comma between St. Mark and Haiti. Christy lives in St. Mark, comma, Haiti. Awesome. Let's slide to the next one. This one says, let's go to school, said Angeline. Okay, is this one a dialogue or an address? Great, it's a dialogue because it's saying what Angeline actually said. And it gives you a huge hint because it has these quotation marks. And that's going to give you a big hint. Okay, let's write this one together. Let's make sure you do quotation marks first. And that little slash right here, this little thing is called an apostrophe. And we just use it. Let's really means let us. So we're going to do a contraction. That means shorten it. For example, sometimes we will say, I cannot do it. Or we might just say, I can't do it. Same thing with this. Let's means let us, but we're just going to say let's. So let apostrophe s, let's go to school. Said. Said is a sight word that you're going to want to know how to read it and write it. If you really use the words or the pronunciation of English, it really should be said, but we say said. So there's a lot of English words that are tricky and they don't make sense, but this is a word that you just need to remember. Said is spelled S-A-I-D. Said. Angeline. Okay. Now, where is this comma going to go? Remember, it goes in between what they said and who said it. So what did Angeline say? Let's go to school. I'm going to kind of do a squiggly line. Let's go to school. Who said it? Angeline. So said Angeline, I'm going to do, that looks too similar. I'm just going to do a straight line. Let's go to school, said Angeline. Now our comma needs to go in between. When you put the comma in between and the said part is at the end of the sentence, the comma goes right after the last word of what they said. So right here. It's going to go right here before the quotation mark and after the last word of what she said. So let's go to school, comma, quotation, said Angeline. Great. Now it's time for you to practice. So let's go to the next slide and we'll see what the first practice problem is. Our first practice problem says, Ketchen said, I want to go to New York City, New York. And just for a little bit of help and reference, New York City is a city and New York is a state. Okay, so let's write this one all together and then I'll have you put the comma where it goes on your own. So Ketchen said, and remember said's our sight word that we just need to know, S-A-I-D. Here's what she said, so it's putting in quotations. I want to go to New York City, New York. Great. Now on your own piece of paper, try this one on your own or with someone sitting next to you. Where does the comma go? Okay, we're back. Where did you put the comma? Here's what I did. I knew New York City was a city, New York was a state, so it needed to go in between the city and the state. So New York City, comma, New York. Great. If you got it right, awesome. If you didn't, check with someone near you or someone who did get it right. See what you did wrong or where are you confused. Let's slide to our next practice. Okay, this practice says, I want pizza, said Ecclesiastes. Now, if you know Ecclesiastes, you know he loves pizza and candy and peanut butter. So this isn't crazy that he said this. He probably does say this a lot. He said, I want pizza. So let's write that down together. In quotes, I, capitalize I, want pizza, said Ecclesiastes. Okay, now on your own, see if you can figure out where does the comma go. All right, we're back. Let's figure out where we put this comma. So here's what I did. I made a squiggly line under what was said. So Ecclesiastes said, I want pizza. Who said it? Ecclesiastes. So I'm going to underline said Ecclesiastes. I know the comma needs to go in between what he said and who said it, right in between. So it needs to go somewhere right here. I'm just going to make it square. Remember, if who said it is at the end, the comma goes after the last word before the quotation mark, right here. So it should not go right here. It needs to go right after the last word, okay? Because commas need to be attached in a way to the word. So if we put it here, it's not attached, it's kind of attached to this, and we don't like that. So we want it attached to pizza, okay? I want pizza, comma, end quotation, said Ecclesiastes. All right, great job. We are going to move on to the lab work now. So let's slide to see what your lab work for today is. For your lab work today, you will insert commas in the correct place based on what we learned today. What I'm going to do before you start your lab work is I just want to go through numbers 1 and 2 and make sure you know if it's a city or a state or a country, okay? Number 1 says, we are going to Los Angeles, California. Our city is Los Angeles and our state is California. So make sure you know that before you put the comma in, because if you thought the city was Los and the state was Angeles, California, then you'd get it wrong because you put the comma in the wrong place. So the city is Los Angeles, the state is California. On number 2, it says, they go to school in Boston, Massachusetts. The city is Boston, the state is Massachusetts. Okay, it's time for you to work. Make sure you add commas in the correct places. Try this on your own, and then we'll pause the video, and once you finish and everyone in the room finishes, we'll come back and see if you got them correct. Go ahead and pause the video now. Welcome back. Let's slide over and see if you got the answers correct. Okay, go ahead and check out the answers. See if you got the same or if you messed up a few. The correct commas are in red. So you can go ahead, pause the video to see if your answers are correct. Pause the video now. Great job. Let's slide and review our learning target for today. Our learning target for today, and let's read it all together, was I am learning to use commas in addresses and dialogue. Let's slide on over to our self-evaluation. If you feel like you did awesome using commas and you totally know how to do it, all the lab work was correct, give yourself a 3. If you feel pretty good about commas in addresses and dialogue, and you maybe got 1 or 2 wrong in the lab work, give yourself a 2. And maybe there's someone next to you that's giving themselves a 3. Maybe go sit by them and ask them some questions. If you're totally lost and you have no idea where to put these commas, give yourself a 1. Remember, it's okay to be a 1. It's great to be honest because you have lots of people around you that can help you and want to help you. If you gave yourself a 1, maybe you need to rewatch this episode with someone that knows it really well and they can help you and guide you through this episode. Great job today. We'll see you next time on Pathways Plus.